Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Smiles here, and we are back to Charlie Bone and the Time Twister. And let's just hop right in. The Pet's Cafe. For a few seconds, Charlie and his great uncle looked at each other in complete silence. And then Peyton sat at the table and said, "I wish I'd known about this before, but to tell the truth, Charlie, I've only just learned what your endowment could lead to." "I don't understand," said Charlie. At the back of his mind, he could still hear the dreadful chanting voice. "It's like this," said Peyton. "As you know, I've been working on a history of the U-beams and their ancestor, the Red King. This has entailed a great deal of research, in the course of which I have come across several characters whose talents are very similar to yours and those of your friends. One of them, a certain Charles Pennybuck, began by hearing portraits speak. He lived long before photos had arrived on the scene, and this eventually led to his entering the portraits and conversing directly with the, how shall we say, the persons depicted in the paintings." "You mean they could see him too?" "Oh, yes," said Peyton. "Unfortunately, poor Pennybuck came to a very sticky end. Got caught in the portrait of a very nasty character, the Count of Corbeau. Corbeau? I would say Corbeau. My bad. If I remember rightly, went quite mad." "Who?" asked Charlie. "Pennybuck or the Count?" "Pennybuck, of course," said Peyton. "Oh dear, I probably shouldn't have told you that, Charlie. Now you mustn't worry. I'm sure it won't happen to you." "But what about Scarpo?" said Charlie anxiously. "I mean, if he's seen me." "Ah, Scarpo." Peyton went to the fridge and took out a bottle of white wine. He took 2 glasses from a cupboard and brought them to the table. "Scarpo," Charlie prompted, "you were saying—" "Scarpo lived about 500 years ago. This portrait is very old." Peyton tapped the back of the picture. "He was the kind of sorcerer that Ezekiel Bloor would like to have been, but old Ezekiel could never manage anything like Scarpo." "Such as what?" asked Charlie. "Better for you not to know." Peyton held up the bottle. "Want a glass of wine, dear boy? I'm sure you could do with one." He poured a glass for himself. "No, thanks," said Charlie impatiently. "Uncle Peyton, I think you might tell me a bit more about Scarpo. I mean, what's going to happen to me now that he's seen me?" "I've no idea," said Peyton. "Perhaps nothing will happen, and then, again, perhaps you can actually make use of his power. There was a lot of it, according to my books. Just be on your guard, Charlie. If you find yourself acting strangely, then come and tell me, and we'll try to figure something out." This wasn't very reassuring, but Charlie realized it was the best he could hope for. He decided to take a sip of Peyton's wine, and then another. By the time his mother came in, he was feeling quite cheerful. "Feasting in the dark," said Mrs. Bone, turning on the light. "Oops," said Peyton, averting his eyes from the lamp. "Watch out, Amy. I've already had one accident today." "Sorry, Peyton. I forgot." Mrs. Bone turned off the light and proceeded to make a pot of tea by candlelight. Charlie took his mug of tea to bed. When he left the kitchen, Peyton was listening enraptured as Mrs. Bone described every scene in Divine Drums. Because of his light exploding problem, he hadn't been available to visit a theater since he was a child, and he loved to listen to Amy Bone's animated accounts. She could be a very good storyteller when she did something out of the ordinary. The following afternoon, Charlie and his uncle set off for the Pet's Cafe. At the end of Filbert Street, they met Benjamin and Runner Bean. "Why is your uncle reading a book?" asked Benjamin, as if Payne were not there. Charlie's uncle was hardly aware of Benjamin. He was concentrating fiercely on the large book, which he held only a few inches from his nose. Charlie explained that this was an experiment. "Ah," said Benjamin. with a knowing smile. Can me and Runner come too? You might need extra help. The two boys walked either side of Peyton while Runner Bean lopped ahead. It was a chilly gray Sunday, and luckily there weren't many people about. Charlie felt slightly embarrassed walking beside a man with his nose in a large book. There was a tricky moment when they reached the traffic lights. Peyton was about to walk across a red light when the boys shouted, "No!" Peyton glanced up, startled, and Charlie whispered urgently, "Don't look at the lights, Uncle Peyton." Murmured Peyton, stepping back onto the curb. "Whew," breathed Benjamin. "That was close." They resumed their journey, avoiding traffic lights where they could and guiding Peyton across the busiest roads. At last they found Water Street, and a little further, on a narrow alley with the sign of a frog high on the wall. "Doesn't look like a proper sign," Benjamin commented. "It must be Frog Street," said Charlie, "because it's next to Water Street." He didn't dare ask his uncle for advice because there was a lighted window just below the frog sign. Runner Bean settled the question. He ran down the alley barking excitedly, and the boys had no option but to follow him. It seemed a very unlikely place for a cafe. But as they walked further from the main road, they began to hear the barks, grunts, and screechings of many creatures. "Sounds like a zoo," said Benjamin. Runner Bean had disappeared round a bend at the end of the alley and was now barking deliriously. Charlie put a hand on his uncle's arm and steered him around the corner. And there was the Pets Cafe. It appeared to have been built into an ancient wall and filled the entire end of the alley. On one side, a small green door stood open to the street, and on the other, a group of dogs stood barking at Runner Bean through a huge latticed window. Above the window, there was a sign covered with paintings of animals. The words, "The Pets Cafe," could just be made out between the twirling tails, paws, whiskers, wings, and claws. "This is it," said Charlie, guiding Peyton to the door. Benjamin grabbed Runner Bean's collar, and they all went in. The crescendo of animal noises was so loud, Charlie could hardly hear his own voice. "I can see a counter right at the back," he shouted at Benjamin. Before they could get there, a large man with curly black hair stepped in front of them. He was wearing a long white shirt decorated with elephant heads. "Animals?" he said. "No," said Charlie. "We're human." "I know that," the man said impatiently. "Where are your companions? No one's allowed in without an animal, bird, or reptile." "Oh." Charlie's face fell. We've got a dog," Benjamin piped up. "He's over there, talking to a Labrador." "One animal each," said the man. "Otherwise, out." He pointed to the door. Peyton was finding it difficult to concentrate on his book. He held it even closer to his face in efforts to avoid looking at the lights twinkling in the low ceiling. he muttered, and then, in a low voice, "Smells awful. Let's go." Charlie was just wondering what to do next when Gabriel appeared holding a large wooden box. He took 2 gerbils from the box and handed one to Charlie and popped another into Peyton's top pocket. No," Peyton objected, touching a gerbil nose. But it was too late. The large man said, "That's better," and ushered them up to the counter. Here they were faced with a difficult choice. All along the counter, among plates of ordinary biscuits, there were bowls of colored sausages, cakes that smelled of fish, round pellets that could have been chocolate, or might not have been, and seeds of various sizes. "I recommend the sausages. They're delicious." "They look as if they could have been for dogs," said Charlie. "Probably are," said Gabriel. "They're still delicious. The gerbils love 'em." "Biscuits and 3 waters, please," said Charlie, playing safe. The man behind the counter said, If it isn't Charlie Bone. Charlie blinked. At last he recognized Mr. Onimus, the mouse catcher. It was his pointy-toothed smile that gave him away. He looked very different in his chef's white hat and apron. Last time Charlie had seen him, he'd been wearing a fake fur coat and a velvet waistcoat. "What are you doing here, Mr. Onimus?" Charlie asked. "Giving my wife a helping hand," said Mr. Onimus. "It's her cafe, you know. Her idea entirely. Good, isn't it?" "Brilliant," said Charlie. "But do the flame cats mind all these other visitors? I mean, they live with you, don't they?" "The flames?" Mr. Onimus raised his whiskery eyebrows. "They're not often here, bless 'em. Far too busy with their own particular duties. They pop in around midnight for a quick bite and a snooze, and then they're off again. Unless they need me, of course, in which case I have to follow them." "I see." Charlie paid for the food. It was very cheap. "Good to see you, Charlie," said Mr. Onimus. "You take care now." "You too, Mr. Onimus." The queue behind Charlie was growing, so he took his tray to the table where his friends were sitting. He had to push his way through a crowd of dogs before he could reach the table. Gabriel had chosen a place right beside the window, and they were able to watch the strange assortment of customers approaching the cafe. At the table beside them, a tarantula crawled round a red straw hat. The woman wearing the hat seemed quite happy about the situation. Now and again, she passed tidbits up to the tarantula. Ugh. Fearing the tidbits were alive, Charlie looked away. "What have you got to show us, then?" he asked Gabriel. Gabriel pulled a plastic bag from the table. "Look." He reached into the bag and drew out an old tweed cap and a battered Macintosh. "Ace's disguise," said Charlie. "Exactly. I even found the mustache." Gabriel held up a strip of white whiskers. "They were lying in the lane outside our yard. I reckon the wind from Thunder House blew them there. Asa probably hid them in the woods." Charlie shuddered. "You mean it was Asa in the woods?" "Asa was a whatever he can turn into when it's getting dark." "Does he have to take all his clothes off," asked Benjamin, "before he turns into a beast?" Gabriel frowned at him. "This is serious, Benjamin." "Sorry, I just wondered." "Why would Asa go all the way up to the heights?" murmured Charlie. "Does he live there?" "I don't know where he lives," said Gabriel, "but I think he was warning us off. He was trying to make sure we wouldn't go back to Thunder House." "But why?" asked Charlie. Gabriel shrugged. "Perhaps it's got something to do with your cousin, Henry. That evil old man who sent him through time knows he's come back. He's probably furious." "Of course," said Charlie. "Ezekiel has ordered Manfred and Asa to find Henry. But they know we'll protect him. You, me, Lysander, and Tancred. So they're trying to split us up. Weaken us. Have you told Lysander about the clothes?" "Couldn't contact him," said Gabriel. "I'll see him tomorrow." At that moment, a body flung itself into the window. Charlie looked up to see Asa Pike glaring at them through the small glass panes. His lips were drawn back in a horrible snarl, and his yellow eyes darted around the table until he saw the bag of clothes. "Mine," he rasped. "Give them here, you wretches." His sudden appearance caused an uproar in the cafe. Terrified birds fluttered, screeching to the ceilings. Dogs threw back their heads and howled. Cats hissed and spat. Rabbits rushed under tables, and everything else hid behind the large pot plants that's standing around the room. "He's not very popular, is he?" Benjamin said in a shaky voice. "Keep reading, Uncle Peyton," Charlie warned. The cafe was already in a turmoil without his uncle breaking glass. Food was flying everywhere. Plates had been smashed, drinks had been spilled, and anxious customers were tripping over frightened animals. "Look out," said Gabriel. "Here he comes." Asa crashed through the door and walked straight into the man in the elephant shirt. "Animal?" said the man, who evidently was a sort of bouncer. For a moment, Charlie thought Asa was going to say he was an animal, but he just snarled into the man's face. "That's it," said the bouncer. "Out!" He grabbed Asa by the scruff of his scrawny neck and thrust him out onto the pavement. Asa whipped around and was about to burst in again when several large dogs rushed through the open door and set upon him. Asa gave a high-pitched yell and ran off round the corner, followed by the pack of baying dogs. If Benjamin hadn't leapt up and grabbed Runnerbean's collar, he would have joined the chase. The big dog was very disappointed to miss the fun, and whined monotonously until Mr. Onimus gave him a rainbow-colored bone to chew. The Pets Cafe was emptying rapidly. Several customers had gone racing after their dogs, and others, having caught and calmed their pets, had decided to leave before things got worse. Charlie and his friends stayed to help Mr. Onimus and the bouncer, Norton Cross, to clear up the mess. "That tall bloke's a bit of a lazy layabout," Norton remarked, glancing at Peyton, who was still reading his book. "He can have accidents," said Charlie awkwardly, "so it's best that he doesn't help." "He's special," said Mr. Onimus, winking at Charlie. "Oh, Lord, not one of them, is he? We've got more than our fair share of oddballs in this city," grumbled Norton. "That one of the dogs chased. You could tell he was peculiar. Animals always know when something ain't right." Mrs. Silk, who had finished her deliveries, came through a door at the back of the counter. She was followed by an extremely tall woman with pale, wispy hair and a very long nose. Surprisingly, this turned out to be Mrs. Honoria Onimus. She was a gentle, friendly person and seemed to like children almost as much as animals. When at last the cafe was restored to order, Mrs. Silk offered the boys a lift back to Filbert Street. "And your father, too," she said, glancing at Peyton. "If that is your father." "No, I haven't got a—" "No, that's not my father," said Charlie, handing over Gabriel's gerbil. "And we've got to go somewhere else. Thanks all the same." "Righty-o, then. Cheerio, boys. Come on, Gabriel." Mrs. Silk made for the door. That was a weird way that sounded. Gabriel pulled his other gerbil out of Peyton's pocket. Luckily, he had gone to sleep and had only eaten the peppermint stuck at the bottom of the pocket. "See you tomorrow. It should be interesting. I wonder if Asa's been bitten." He staggered after his mother with a bag of old clothes under one arm and his box of gerbils hugged to his chest with the other. Charlie tapped his uncle's shoulder and said, "We can go now, Uncle Peyton." Peyton stood up, his eyes still glued to the page he was reading. Charlie steered him outside, where they found Benjamin clipping a lead to Runnerbean's collar. "Just in case he gets the urge to chase something," Benjamin explained. Their walk to Ingledew's bookshop was relatively easy. No traffic lights had been navigated, no roads crossed. As they walked round the huge cathedral, they could hear the deep-toned notes of the organ, and Charlie thought of his father. Lyle Bone had been one of the cathedral's organists until one foggy night 8 years before, when he had gotten into his car, driven over the edge of a quarry. He had never been seen again. "I know what you're thinking, dear boy," Charlie murmured. Lyle was his nephew and also one of his best friends. There was a close sign on Ingledew's books, but a soft light in the window illuminated the piles of ancient-looking books. Charlie rang the doorbell. There was no answer. He pressed the bell again. They could hear it ringing in the back of the shop, but no one came to the door. "Didn't you say they went out at weekends?" said Benjamin. They could be at a museum or the cinema or something. Of course, said Charlie. I forgot. Peyton snapped his book shut and stared despondently at the window. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Uncle P, Charlie began, but Peyton's distress was too great. With a small pop, the light at the window went out and a shower of glass settled on the antiques books. Oh, yeah. Glass settled on the antique books. Damn, muttered Peyton. She'll know it was me. No, she won't, said Charlie. Miss Ingledew probably often has lights failing. Failing, yes, moaned Peyton, but not bursting. She knows it's what I do. Come on, Uncle. Oh, dear. Oh, damn. I'll never be able to face her again, sighed Peyton. Of course you will. Let's go home. You won't have to read any more because it's dark. That's true. Peyton turned away from the shop and strode towards the nearest alley. Charlie and Benjamin had to run to keep up with him while Runnerbean dashed ahead hoping for a game. They were moving rapidly down Filbert Street when Peyton said, I don't want my sisters to hear about this little setback. Why are your sisters so mean? Asked Benjamin. It goes back a long way, said Peyton. They always do whatever Ezekiel Bloor wants, said Charlie. It's like they're afraid of him. They are, said Peyton. He's a cousin, and at the moment he holds the power. They admire that. I'm glad I haven't got any aunts, said Benjamin. I'm off now. Mom and Dad are home. Bye. Charlie and Peyton climbed the steps to number 9, but once inside, Peyton marched grimly up to his room. Charlie went into the kitchen to give Macy and his mother a progress report. How did it go? Asked Mrs. Bone. Any mishaps? It went perfectly, lied Charlie. I'll go with him next time, said Macy happily. It'll make such a difference to poor Peyton if he can get out in the daytime. Charlie noticed that Scarpo the sorcerer had disappeared. Where's the painting? He asked. Search me, said his mother. Grandma Bone must have taken it to her room. Grandma Bone had done no such thing. When Charlie went to bed, he found Scarpo on his pillow. Okay, he said grimly. If they want me to go in, I will. But not until I'm ready. And not until I've decided how you can help me. Before he shut the painting in a drawer with his socks, he took a quick look at the sorcerer. The man in black tilted his head towards Charlie and said, Welcome, child of the Red King. Charlie closed the drawer quickly. He wondered how dangerous it would be to go in, as his uncle put it, and asked for Scarpo's help. If Henry Eubeam was to be rescued before old Ezekiel found him, then a bit of sorcery could come in handy.